Sports fans, once again, it's your man Barbershop Jay from the Shop Report, alongside one of my co-hosts. I'm waiting for the other host to co-host, Double J from up north, Joey James, aka y'all know how it go down, right? But first, the Shop Report is brought to you by none other than the fine folks over at Rocket Digital Media. It's the one-stop shop for all your digital marketing needs. You can look them up on Facebook at RDM Detroit, or you can go to the website, rocketdigital.net. That's ROCKIT digital.net. And while you're over there, would you please make sure you tell them that the BSJ sent you? All righty, all righty, all right. Seriously, man, do we really have to have the Leafs in the background? Who put that background up there? Did I do that?
Yeah, that was your request.
Seriously? It might be time. It might be time for it might be time for a new host. But anyway, we are gathered here today to discuss the 2020 Tokyo Olympics a year later. Now, Double J, while we're waiting on the other parties to attend, and we don't even know if they're going to attend at this point, but that's all right. The show must go on, as they say. There are a few interesting tidbits I wrote down here in regards to this because number one, well, let me ask you first. What event are you most interested in seeing in the 2020, 2021, maybe 2022? I don't know if it's 2026 Olympics.
You know, I want to see all of them. There's been so much. So look, in any given Olympic run, right? We've seen countless videos, commercials, and then of course the events themselves, all of which painting a picture, a very vivid picture of what these athletes go through to climb that mountain, just to get there, just to have that walk, during that torch ceremony. And I don't, we've said a lot of times with sports in the past 12 months that, should there be an asterisk? Should there be, well, this isn't really the same. Technically, for these Olympians, we could easily say it was harder. It was more challenging to stay in shape. It was more challenging to get the assistance that they needed because of these distance protocols. So it's going to be interesting to see what impact that has, if any, because are they going, are we going to see the worst times on record? Are they going to put me out there to run, the 100 meters? And, I'll get there, but just have a medical team, waiting. But
yeah, me too. I'll get there too. Just make sure you got a counter for next year, because it's going to take for about a year for me to get across the finish line, so to speak.
And then you factor in, of course, our NBA folks, right, that are coming off of a interesting 12 months themselves, much of which was based on rest. Kind of the R&R side of things. Hey, we need an additional break. Hey, this needs to be a shortened season. Hey, we need to do this, that, and the other thing that generally would have all taken place during a collective bargaining agreement. Now to say, I know your season's going to end. It's a little bit shorter than usual. Not much, but a little bit. We're going to need you guys to go out here and perform at the highest of your abilities. This isn't the Redeem Team. This isn't certainly the Dream Team. And the world themselves has some caliber and merit behind their rosters.
So wait a minute. Are you suggesting by or implying here, you're talking about USA Basketball, right?
That's right.
Okay, so just to add some clarity. Are you suggesting then that the world could possibly defeat USA this go around?
Absolutely. And again, the reason why here is how much motivation do these athletes have, right? That's in the Today BA. I don't
Yeah,
have to
well,
give you too much motivation or
yeah,
ammo to have a field day and make this a very long program on
yeah,
what you believe these
yeah,
superior athletes of today
yeah,
are willing or not willing to do. So,
yeah.
under that guise, you have to really dig deep now to say that to throw in the reality that with what happened in 2019, how much of that still lingers with these folks? Do they care at all under the circumstances?
And then you have to add in the pandemic and the fallout from the pandemic and the bubble, the NBA bubble, and so on and so forth. I mean, here it is. We're talking about the Olympics between now and back then, so to speak, or you say 2019 until now. Let's say you half-hearted, maybe they go into this Olympics because of all that they've gone through so far up to this point. You think?
Well, you certainly can easily make that claim.
Yeah.
As I was stating before, that their motivations, if you recall, they get paid, but not much. Many of which already have a gold medal.
Yeah, but you know what? I think that I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think the Olympics more so than the pocketbook effect is about not even
Go ahead
pride,
and say it. Go
but
ahead and
being
say it.
proud. It's about being proud, to
And
represent your
let's
country or whatnot. You know what
and
I'm
I'm
saying?
so glad you said it that way, because look at specifically the NBA in the stance
Yeah,
that they've taken
yeah,
when it comes to what's taking place within the walls of the United States of America.
yeah.
Is that same pride there? Is this a Jesse Owens moment within within Tokyo as it was in Berlin?
That's why I said proud versus pride, or proud as opposed to pride. Okay, pride is synonymous with country to a certain extent, allegiance, if you would. But proud can be an individual thing. Like, I'm proud for myself. Yes, I'm representing my country, but I'm proud because I, as a kid growing up, never thought I'd have a chance to do X, Y, and Z, or I never thought I'd have a chance to represent my country on this stage. But to add in another quick point, if you would, the well, let's just say some of the host countries or the host cities, I believe, in Japan, you know, are how can you, it's no other way to say it. I mean, they backing out, so to speak. Like, it's one city, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, Okizumo, Okuizumo, Okizumo. They specifically spent more than $5 million to host the Indian team,
Wow.
and had to scrap it all due to COVID. Hello. So, and then, on the world stage, especially basketball in particular, this really and truly epitomizes, in my opinion, what being a world champion or winning on the world stage and being a world champion, what that really, really means. If you win it all in basketball, you can truly say you are a world champion because you beat other contestants or combatants from around the world, literally. you know, I get it's all fun and namesake or whatnot when you say it when you win an NBA championship or a World Series or a Super Bowl. The such and such Patriots are world champions. No, you beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, or the Tampa Bay Buccaneers beat you. You get what I'm saying? Or the Dolphins, and so on and so forth. You didn't have to beat Uruguay. Am I pronouncing it, in a football match? You know what I'm saying? Or Spain or Barcelona, and so on and so forth. So I get that they use that mantra. No, not necessarily a mantra. I'm not sure what you would call it, but I get that they use that term. If you Super Bowl champion, world champion, yeah, have a seat. No, 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 no. You're an American champion. Slow down, Kimosabi. Slow it on down. But here's another interesting point, and this is the most obvious, and I don't hear this being discussed. This is why I don't watch the talking heads the national talking heads as much as I used to, but even still, the little bit that I do get to see, I have yet to see them discussing the Olympics, and in particular, what I'm about to mention here. Now, I know this might be abrasive or offensive to some, and that's not my intent, but just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. They say, the governing bodies in the IOC, that taking a knee, lifting a fist will be punished. Again, says the IOC, maintaining its ban on athletes' protests inside of stadiums, at ceremonies, and on podiums. What say you to that?
I would be very intrigued. This is where you talked about before, that the about motivations, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to be completely transparent here and possibly say that these stances that these folks have taken could very well be that same motivation that takes them in front of that worldwide audience, that global audience, to express themselves. So whatever, I would be intrigued to see what type of punishment these folks would hand down, because here's what's very interesting about that. If you're watching English soccer or La Liga in Spain, in certain countries, they're still taking knees before at the first whistle. So,
oh, really?
to sit,
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
So to sit here and say, now again, it's completely optional, and we've seen in the Champions League and in some of the others that certain participants from certain countries choose not to participate in that.
That's what I'm saying. A few people are pulling out.
That's right. So
yeah,
for them to take this stance and specifically point out kneeling, as you just mentioned, it already has kind of painted this into in a negative light.
Right.
Because if you think about that 1936 Olympics in Berlin, there were a lot of things taking place globally between what Hitler was doing behind the scenes, what he was strategically getting in place, the facade that he was laying out for certain world leaders, in addition to the fact of his stance on why the United States was good and how infuriating. Matter of fact, actually, true story, the meth, they created meth following the Olympics because Hitler believed that there was no way the U.S. athletes were that far superior, Jesse Owens and company, and that the only way they could have beaten their guys like that,
they had to have been on something.
They had to have been on something. And so it ended up being there was a pharmaceutical company that ended up producing it. And then it was part of the Blitzkrieg. So when you think of how they ended up moving and doing things to this day, that is known as a wartime feat that I can't believe, what they were able to do in such a short amount of time. Well, he had everyone in that country that had a part to play in them taking those steps, utilizing that, because it was looked as it's like almost like coffee, like a boost.
Okay.
Again, that was the way it was portrayed. They didn't know yet. So you have that side of things. The fist, of course, also meant a lot of things for what was taking place on the other side of the pond.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting to me that the committee has already came out and specified that, because if you look at those events, there's a reason they're still discussed today.
I know. But now here's the deal, though. I do want to point out the IOC's Rule 50 speaks to this specifically. It forbids any kind of demonstration or political, religious, or racial propaganda in venues in any other Olympic areas. So there it is. That's the IOC's Rule 50. And here's another two more interesting tidbits. The IOC Commission Chief, Kirsty, as like in Kirsty Allen, Kirsty, Kirsty, Kirsty. If I'm saying that right, I'm looking at it, but don't even sound like I'm pronouncing it right. Anyway, Kirsty Coventry, who led a review of the rule, this IOC 50, Rule 50, said that 70% of athletes consulted were against any protests within the field of play or the podiums. Interesting. And then lastly,
Is
Coventry.
it
Say that again.
though? I said, is it though?
Well, yeah. Um, I mean, I don't know. I can't speak. Who knows where the numbers come from? They say 70%. Who knows? But then lastly, Coventry also stated there were a series of recommendations approved by the IOC Executive Board, some of which included a change of wording of the Olympic oath with messages of inclusion and apparel, fully licensed apparel with inclusive messaging on it as well. So it seems somewhere along that what I've read from the beginning till just now seems like there's some sort of contradiction or something going on. You can't put a fist up or take a
Unless they
knee.
can profit off of it.
Oh, that what that is, right? Because to me, if you can't do it, then you should not be allowed to do any and all of it from A to Z, all across the board, right?
Yeah.
But so in other words, taking a knee, putting a fist up, whether it's on clothing or in the wording of your oath, what's the one common denominator? Message. They're different forms, but they all are doing what? Sending a message. So you can send this, you can't send that kind of message, but you can send the kind of message that we can profit, off of. Yeah. You know what? And on that note, you get a womp womp, IOC. Yeah,
So let me ask you then, despite all of that, the 70% in itself is worthy of a topic.
Yeah, right.
But knowing all of those supporting details and facts that they provided, and it being very transparent, where does that put you when it comes to actually wanting to watch this?
Well, to be honest with you, I kind of have done forgot about the Olympics this year. I did. I really, really did. I mean, no, I'm dead serious. I mean, it's a lot of factors, that go into that. I got a lot on my plate in my life outside of
Oh boy,
sports,
here
and
we go.
sports talk, and so on and so forth. Yes, we are going. I had to give myself an applause. Guess what? I'll give my co-host. No interrupting the host. Okay. No, but honestly, it's not. I mean, I wasn't really looking forward to seeing the Olympics this year. I mean, in past years, growing up as a kid or whatever, I liked, the track and field, and of course, when the basketball and when the NBA players got actually the first Dream Team, I didn't really watch much of it either because the competition was just so beneath it. I mean, what was the 89-point blowouts? Guys were taking Angola guys were taking pictures with the Dream Team during the timeout. I mean, come on. So I get it. That Dream Team won. It was phenomenal, but I mean, the competition was kind of weak. It really, really was more than kind of weak. But no, and I like the Katie Ledecky, on the swim side. I mean, the girl can swim. Me personally, I swim like a rock. But I'm just saying, Katie Ledecky, I do like to see her when she get in the water. The girl can swim. She really can get down. But other than that, man, it's not really much to the Olympics now at this stage of my life that I'm looking forward to really, it's not one of them must sees like it was, once upon a time, when I was in my mid 20s or whatever the case may be. It's just not, That's why I actually was looking up something for the podcast, and I came across all these cities of, these host cities pulling out, or of the Olympics, of the Tokyo Olympics, not host cities. I'm sorry, excuse me, other countries and such. And I'm like, what's going on here? So I, started doing a little reading here. I said, wow, okay, let's throw this at my co-host or co-host and and see what they think or whatnot. But yeah, I'm not really too much looking forward to the Olympics. Not this year. I might catch what I can, but it's not. It's a woo, whoop, whoop de doo. But some people it's ching ching, but
Yeah.
not for the kid. Yeah. Are there any other interesting events that you might want to make a note here that the 2020 Olympics is supposed to have? I heard skateboarding was one of them.
Yeah, they did announce that they were going to have that. So that's again, I think that their way of trying to adapt, and I guess attempt at inclusion.
What about maybe to stay relevant, or is relevancy a factor?
Well, I mean, absolutely, because if you look at things like water polo and certain sports, even your field hockey is another good one. It's so what would be the right term? It's just not
Passe.
yeah,
Yeah.
to say the least.
Yeah.
And so, not that skateboarding should have really been there 20 plus years ago. You would have been able to see, because again, that is a global sport. There are plenty of people, I'm sure, that have picked up the joysticks and played any of those Tony Hawk games
Yeah. Oh boy,
years and years ago.
My
And
son was really into that.
just being able to see that guys like the impact that they had, that you go back to the Dogtown guys and Tony Alva and in those folks.
Is he competing, by the way?
Well, I remember that was a longboard. So
okay.
Yeah, that was a different type of skateboard. So which is, again, Tony Hawk and others will tell you that was far more challenging to try to pull off some of the stuff that they were doing. But all of which I think it really is a big salute to them, because the arrests, the fines, all of the trials and tribulations that they had, and not just them. I mean, those are the names, but there's countless others out there that had picked it up, lost a tooth, gotten a scratch, learned it wasn't for them, but at least enjoyed seeing what it could do. That it really is a culmination of all of their efforts for it to reach this point. So I do want to at least make sure that they're equally celebrated, despite their inability, largely based on age at this point. There's a video floating around out there of Tony Hawk doing his last 540. And
really?
Yeah, and it took him a while, and he did it, and you could see it was a little bit of a tearjerker, because again, he's in his 50s now. So
yeah,
as you say,
he's had one heck of a ride, man.
Well, now that next gen, it's that next gen. I mean, even kids, you go back 15 years ago, and you had Ryan Shecklers and others, and now they're old, and it's like wow. It's very much like the UFC, that those runs are you only have a certain window.
Yeah, like 15 minutes of fame.
Yeah,
you get in and you get out. Two more points I wanted to bring up. One, if I'm not mistaken, did I hear something? I mean, I didn't read anything. I couldn't find anything really. I really didn't kind of had the time to really do in depth. But the X Games, or some portion of the X Games, aside from skateboarding or whatever, is that supposed to be a part of the Olympics as well, or was it just skateboarding?
No, that was part of it. They've started to be a little bit more inclusive, or at least in the consideration phase of some of those events coming over, both winter and summer.
Okay.
But again, I think just given the branding and all of those things related on the ESPN side, that I think they would be a little less thrilled to lose essentially, their what they have.
Yeah, I take that back. I said I was not as interested in seeing the Olympics this go around in an event in any event in particular, excuse me. But now that I think about it, this whole skateboarding idea is one I'm interested to see because it's like unprecedented. It's the first time for it or whatnot. And I'd like to see how they actually pull it off. And then of course, as an added bonus, to give me and my son, who's still into that sort of thing, a little bit of extra bonding time, right? Okay. And then the second and last point before we get on out of here, you mentioned something early on in the program about the 1936 Olympics, the one with Owens in it, right? When that 36.
Yep.
From my understanding, now I don't know how true this is, and I could not find anything, but from my understanding, there's some reports out there that at the time Hitler shook hands with Owens after the fact. Do you know anything about that? Did you hear
it's interesting you say that, because knowing a lot about that particular Olympics and knowing how frustrated he was.
He being Owens?
No, both parties.
Oh, okay.
Were very frustrated with
for different reasons.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
And so with that being said, I personally hadn't heard that. I did, I was always under the assumption that it was a general, that Hitler was so embarrassed that he didn't pass it out. And that was the reason why he said he had a headache or something, but really it was out of embarrassment.
Yeah. And the last thought, with the pandemic and the effect that it has had on this Olympics, do you think that will somehow or another affect the next Olympics down the road, even though we're another 4 years away? Or do you think that they'll have everything back in full swing by that time?
Well, I think at this point, in a year's time, we kind of speculated on this a year ago itself, thinking that that rush to the vaccine and everything else would kind of fall into place. And unfortunately, that has been proven to not entirely be true.
Right.
In an additional year, as much of a optimist as I'd like to be, the concern I have is surrounding those variants that we talked about when we had the doctor on the program. And those, of course, is what you're seeing that are kind of leading or being the catalyst themselves to the increase in case numbers and such. However, relating to the Olympics themselves, as far as events and then moving forward in the future, I definitely believe the athletes themselves will be able to be vaccinated. And then at that point, likely be maybe a little less concerned, because again, you're talking about folks that are in, peak, condition, that, again, there is still the risk of adverse reactions, or any kind of conditions that they may have. But otherwise, I believe at that point, from the athletic side of things, in the athletes specifically, they'll be able to have the events, no problem. But relating to the actual crowd goers and that part of it still may be up in the air.
Well, I say, who in the UEFA said that the IOC can make changes on the fly? That's right. I said UEFA. And on that note, it's been fun, but we got to run. We appreciate y'all for checking us out. Hey, don't forget to check out our podcast, right here on Spreaker.com at 8 p.m. For my man's Double J. And of course, I'm Barbershop J. Don't wave. And remember, the next time y'all want to know what's really going on, man, come to the shop. Walk-ins are always welcome. Holla. Oh, and one more for the road.
My buddy, my buddy, my buddy, my buddy. Wherever I go, he goes. My buddy, my buddy, my buddy, my buddy. I'll teach him everything that I know. My buddy and me like to climb up a tree. My buddy and me, we're the best friends could be. My buddy, my buddy, my
Yes.
buddy, my buddy and me.
My buddy from Play School.
From
Unbelievable.
Play School.
Unbelievable.
Not necessarily. That's you and Brother Richard's theme music. Again, folks, we catch up with y'all. Don't forget to check out that podcast on Spreaker.com, peoples, Tuesdays at 8 p.m. I'm out.